Begin with the end in mind. You've heard that old Steve Covey phrase. Well, it definitely applies to inventory software implementation projects. I'm Lance with Brandow Consulting, inventory software expert since 2006. In this video, I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit and tell you about what was a game changer for my inventory software implementations. And that is what I call the desired overall workflow step. Now, my career in implementation started back in 2006 when I worked for Fishbowl Inventory. And back then, I didn't really have things figured out. I was just figuring things out. And it was all about training back then. That was our big focus. That was my big focus, is train, right? People need training to have success with the software. So I would go out on a 2-day on-site and train, wow everyone with my fishbowl knowledge. It was like a drink through the fire hose experience. Come home, customer was so happy and impressed, and we'd always go for the 5-star review. I got some 5-star reviews, and but I like to follow up with the customer, and I was really discouraged to find that a lot of the times, well, way more than I thought, the customer would say, "Oh yeah, we're not using the software yet." And boy, that was like a kick in the gut. I'm like, well, we just, had an awesome training 2 months ago. What happened, So there was definitely a missing step, and it was obviously in the setup of the software. It was obvious that they couldn't really start using the software until it was set up. So we really thought that, okay, setup needs to happen before training. Well, I started working for Woodard Consulting in 2010, worked there from about 2010 to 2012. And so while I was there, I made sure we focused a lot on setup. And Joe was excited about or focused on setup too. Definitely on the same page there. And we help people set up the software and then gave them their training, whether it was on a sandbox or a live software. We definitely improved the implementation success rate, probably doubled the success rate that I had at Fishbowl when I worked for Fishbowl. So we're seeing a lot of improvements, but I just wasn't seeing the success of the implementation that I wanted or I felt should happen. With the knowledge I had with Fishbowl, it just seemed like my implementation success rate with my clients should have been 100%, right? Or at least 90 or 95%. Well, it was still lacking quite a bit. And when I founded Brandow Consulting in 2012, this was a problem I wanted to solve. I wanted to I wanted to get there where my implementation success rate was like at 95%. And it took some praying. It took some humbling to realize, gosh, even though I know everything about Fishbowl, it's still not happening, right? And so as an answer to prayer for happy customers, the thought that came to my mind was workflow. Begin with the end in mind. Decide on best practices. I had customers asking me, "Hey, I want to know what the best practices are. I want to know what the best practices are." Well, best practices are different for each workflow. One way to use the software may not be the right way, or the right way for one company to use the software may not be the right way for another company to use the same software, even if they're in the same industry. I have a lot of companies coming to me saying, "Well, you've done a coffee manufacturing implementation before. How did they do it?" Right? And that's always nice to know, but I was surprised to see that the next coffee manufacturer did something a little bit different, and we needed to write a different procedure for that company. And the way for one coffee manufacturer to use the software was not the same way for another coffee manufacturer. And I've found that applied to a lot of different industries. So, desired overall workflow is what we started focusing on. And now it's step one. Now it's step one in my inventory software implementation projects is we create a document that documents from a high level how to create a sales order, or what's the best way for your company to create a sales order. And you can do this yourself. Ask yourself, before you implement an inventory software program, write down your thoughts. What's your desire? What's your vision of the way you want your warehouse to operate, the way you want your office to operate, the way you want your warehouse and office to communicate, right? So what's the best way to enter a sales order? What's the best way to enter a work order if you do manufacturing? What's the best way for you guys to create a purchase order and do your purchasing and procurement? What's the best way to fulfill purchase orders, receiving and reconciling and entering the vendor invoice? What's the best way to start a work order and pick for that work order and close the work order? What's the best way for your company to fulfill sales orders with picking, packing, and shipping? Basically, what you're focusing on is your software usage. What's the best way for your company to use the features in the software to best benefit your goals and your needs in your personal workflow? So I call it a desired overall workflow document. Begin with the end in mind. It's your vision of where you want to go, what you want to get to, how you would like to see your well-oiled machine operating at the end of the day. I'm Lance, inventory software expert since 2006. If this thought, this idea on my soapbox was helpful, please like, and I'd love to hear your experiences from your inventory software implementations and what you think of this idea, this documenting a desired overall workflow as a step one in your inventory software implementation project. Subscribe if you'd like to see more soapbox videos, if you'd like to see tutorial videos or demo videos of other inventory software programs for QuickBooks.